the audio version of the book by the same title. I am the author of the book, and it's my voice that you'll hear for every chapter, each wisdom code, and every exercise in this audio program. This was a deeply personal book for me to write, and it may be a personal book for you to hear as well. And the reason is because the wisdom codes that follow are based in the heart of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions and our relationship to those traditions. Our ancestors have always turned to words for refuge in times of need, and it's in their mantras and their prayers and chants and hymns that those who have come before us have found strength, comfort, solace, and healing in precise patterns and sequences of words that have been passed from one generation to the next. The powerful word codes that worked for our ancestors in their time still work for us today. That is, if we know what they are and how to awaken their power and healing in our lives. Well, for much of my adult life, I've explored the people that use these codes as well as the temples and tombs and monasteries and texts that they left to us as their legacy. And it's in this audio program that I can do something that I cannot do in a printed book. I can bring the benefit of my experience to you directly through the sound and the emotion of these ancient word codes, and I can do so using the language that they were originally created and offered from. As is often the case with ancient traditions, in many instances, there are simply no one-to-one correspondences between the words of the past and the English language of today. And I'm saying this to you now because the translations that I share may vary from those that you've heard or are accustomed to. And I want you to know that I've done my very best to honor the original sounds and the original intent for the full benefit of these powerful codes of human consciousness. I hope that you enjoy the journey that we're about to share as much as I enjoy sharing it with you. The Wisdom Codes, ancient words to rewire our brains and heal our hearts. Neuroscientist Andrew Newberg, MD, and his co-author Mark Robert Waldman tell us that a single word has the power to influence the expression of genes that regulate physical and emotional stress. In the words of a poet, Emily Dickinson reminded us of the power of our words in a non-scientific way when she said, "I know nothing in the world that has as much power as a word." Almost universally, we use words to comfort ourselves in times of need. From the Blessing Way prayer used by the Navajo of the American Desert Southwest, or the Diné people as they know themselves in their own tongue, to honor natural order in times of chaos, to the Old Testament priestly blessing discovered on 2 tiny silver scrolls dating to nearly 3,000 years ago. World history is filled with examples of words that have soothed, comforted, and protected us, individually and collectively, formally and informally, out loud and under our breath. Through the ages, we humans have enjoyed special words to help us navigate the most difficult moments of life. If we think of our creations as the expression of ideas that live within us, then our art, film, music, and writing take on a meaning of something more than simple entertainment. Such a relationship between our inner and outer worlds leads us to view our inspiration as consciousness informing itself, reminding us of our untapped possibilities and potential. From this perspective, the spiritual traditions of our past and the words that preserve them are living examples that reveal a timeless communication. In writing the Wisdom Codes, I envisioned a collection of trusted words that we have historically turned to in times of need, distilled into an easy-to-read, quick-access, modern-day manual. This group of revered prayers, mantras, chants, and hymns is designed to provide reassurance, protection, and healing when life brings danger, hurt, unspeakable loss, and self-doubt to our doorstep. In such times, even the most well-meaning support of family and friends often falls short of finding its way into the dark void of our emotional abyss. In such times, all we may have is ourselves, and ultimately, that's all we need. Once I understood this simple truth, it made perfect sense that we already have the power to rewire our brains on demand, and in doing so, to choose to self-regulate the way we respond to life's extremes. Through consciously applying the word codes of the past to the challenges that we face in each moment of our lives, we benefit from the wisdom of ancient sages and healers, mystics and prophets, and in doing so, we are no longer victims. We're no longer defined by the circumstances, but become masters of our destiny. And this is the power of the wisdom codes. In their presence, we are changed. When we speak the words, either out loud or silently to ourselves, something shifts within us, and that something is where the power of the words, chemistry, and neurons converge in a beautiful and powerful way. We associate the words of the codes with the meaning that we give to the words. And it's this association that directs our brain cells, our neurons, to connect in a precise way that harmonizes our biology with the energy of our emotions. Chemically, we are no longer the same person we were only moments or hours before. And it's that difference that opens the door to new ways of thinking, feeling, and acting when it comes to our losses, our fears, and betrayals. And while our changes may be subtle and perhaps even go unnoticed by those with whom we share our lives, it's precisely these changes that give us the wisdom, confidence, and power to awaken a deeper power within ourselves. Introduction. We think in words. We speak in words. In the silence of our minds, we hear the word messages of our subconscious thoughts, repeating at the dizzying rate of 60,000 to 80,000 times each day, according to scientific estimates. And now, new evidence suggests that the power of our words extends far beyond what these statistics have revealed in the past. Recent studies confirm a theory that was first proposed early in the 20th century, that the words of our everyday language directly influence the way our brain wires itself when it comes to how we think and even what we are capable of thinking about. The discovery. The discovery of our word-brain relationship is not the product of a well-coordinated research effort in a state-of-the-art laboratory searching for such a mystical-sounding link. Rather, it's the result of an unexpected realization that emerged from an unplanned teaching assignment between 1937 and 1938. It was during this time that American linguist Benjamin Lee Whorf found himself substitute instructing a graduate-level class in Native American linguistics. While filling in for a colleague who was on a year-long sabbatical, Whorf recognized a previously overlooked nuance in the language of the North American Hopi. Speakers of this language describe the events of everyday life without using or even referencing the experience of time. In other words, the Hopi language uses words that describe the present moment and what's happening in the moment with no words to directly describe the past or the future. It was this paradigm-altering use of language that led Whorf to the discovery that our words influence the way our neurons connect, a discovery that shattered the scientific beliefs of his day and remains controversial as well as acclaimed today. Speaking the moment. The indigenous experience of seeing lightning in the sky is a perfect illustration of Whorf's discovery. When the Hopi refer to lightning, for example, their language describes it as a verb that's occurring rather than a noun for something that exists. They say the equivalent of "it is lightning-ing," indicating that the lightning is in a state of being rather than observing the lightning as a natural object. In a similar way, when considering the ocean, rather than describing a single wave as the noun "the wave" or "a wave," the Hopi see the wave as part of an all-inclusive system that is present, alive, and happening in the moment. Their thinking is reflected in the language that describes the experience, and they say the wave is waving, just as a lightning bolt is lightning-ing. The words of a living universe. It's these word structures that Worf believed were responsible for the harmonious way that the Hopi think of themselves, structure their lives, and view their relationship to the world around them in the cosmos. When considering the entirety of creation, for example, the Hopi see a living universe of connectivity that emerged long ago from a primal state of harmony. Within this system of oneness, the Hopi view cooperation between people and within nature as everyday expressions of a universal harmony that extends throughout the cosmos. This life-affirming way of thinking stands in sharp contrast to the conventional scientific perspective of today that describes the universe as a dead system that emerged from a series of random and unbelievably fortunate cosmic events long ago. From this worldview of lucky biology, mainstream science attributes our origin and continued existence to the success of competition and what 19th century naturalist Charles Darwin called survival of the strongest, a premise that the best science of the 21st century now tells us simply is not true. New discoveries in biology, as well as the other life sciences, now reveal that cooperation and not competition is the fundamental rule of nature. Words can change your brain. The implications of the word-life relationship are profound. It appears that the language we use, the words we choose to describe ourselves and share our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs, actually form the framework for the unity or the separation that we experience when we think and solve the problems of everyday life. These proven word-brain relationships now have opened the door to an even deeper question. And the question is this: is it possible that by choosing specific words to address the challenges in our lives, that we could rewire our own brains to discover new ways of solving our problems? In other words, can the conscious choice of words and word patterns help us actually to think and feel differently in times of crisis, trauma, loss, and need? Well, the short answer to this question is yes, and the long answer is what the rest of this book is all about. As we'll see in the pages that follow, our ancestors held precisely this belief, and beyond simply acknowledging such a powerful bridge between words and biology, they applied their understanding as word codes in their times of need. In the recent book titled Words Can Change Your Brain, physician Andrew Newberg and co-author Mark Waldman echo Worf's ideas and tell us precisely what the word-brain connection means. They describe this relationship clearly, stating, and this is a quote, "A single word has the power to influence the expression of genes that regulate physical and emotional stress," end of quote. Additionally, Newberg and Waldman reveal a relationship between our words and our body that goes even beyond the level of the genes to impact our perception of reality itself. The phenomenon begins in the thalamus, a small gland near the center of the brain that relays sensory information to the areas of the brain that interpret and then act upon the signals to form our perceptions of the world. They write, and this is a quote, "Over time, the structure of your thalamus will also change in response to your conscious words, thoughts, feelings, and we believe that the thalamic changes affect the way in which you perceive reality," end of quote. These discoveries add to a growing body of evidence revealing the power of words and how we may use them to help us in difficult moments of our own lives. The Wisdom Codes. Worf's 20th century discoveries and recent scientific revelations in the field of neuroscience and biology are all telling us the same story. They point to the same relationship. Our words influence the chemistry in our bodies, the neurons in our brains, and the way our neurons connect and fire to determine, number one, how we think of ourselves and solve our problems, and number two, what we are even capable of thinking about. It's these insights that give new meaning to the chants, the hymns, the prayers, and the mantras used in the traditions of the past. For thousands of years, precise words and ritual phrases have been spoken from father to son, mother to daughter, shaman to shaman, and healer to healer. And from the time of the earliest writings, these are the messages that were preserved for future generations in the sacred scripts and mysterious glyphs that withstood the test of time. Today we find the legacy of our ancestors' efforts in some of the most remote, isolated, and hidden locations on Earth. Monasteries, temples, and tombs that stand as silent repositories of timeless wisdom. We also find this verbal legacy recorded in the sacred literature of the world's most revered spiritual traditions. Our ancestors preserved their secrets for the people living in their time, as well as for those living in a future they could only imagine. For us, they sensed that future generations would need the same emotional anchors and psychological strength to prevail in the struggles of war, climate extremes, and social chaos that they'd experienced in their day, which they suspected would return at a later time. From the ancient Sanskrit Vedas, believed to have originated over 7,000 years ago, to the Mahabharata, the teachings of the Buddha, the lost texts of the Judeo-Christian Bible, and the sacred mysteries of indigenous traditions, the power of the wisdom codes is available for us today if we understand what they mean and how to apply them to our own circumstances. Using this book. As many and varied as life's tests may seem to be at first glance, a closer look at the challenges that we face reveals a subtle relationship between our experience and our perceptions. The relationship is this: what we often perceive as separate issues are, in reality, different expressions of the same underlying issue. For example, while we commonly think of anger, jealousy, and criticism as separate issues to be dealt with one by one, each ultimately points to the same core issue, that is, unresolved fear. By healing or resolving our underlying fear, we dismantle the need for safety and the reasons why varied expressions of the same fear may be showing up in our lives. Our ancestors understood these relationships. They also understood the power of the cascade effect in relationships, the healing of many emotions through the resolution of a single core fear. They shared what they discovered as the deep wisdom encoded in the sacred words that have survived the test of time. With these ideas in mind, I've selected a core group of wisdom codes that address the issues that we most commonly face in life today. These timeless codes are designed to bring us the greatest strength and the deepest healing in the quickest possible way. The first 5 parts of this book are each dedicated to one of the core issues that challenge us most in life. They are protection, fear, loss, strength, and love. I've also included 2 additional parts that empower us through their understanding and use. Part 6 features the power codes of I am and I will. And Part 7 features 2 ancient parables to remind us of 2 healing truths about ourselves. For easy and consistent access, each section is arranged in the following format. First, the wisdom code, the power code, or the parable itself, a direct quote from a text, scripture, or revered teaching from our past. Second, the use of the wisdom code, the intended experience that the code is designed to address. Third is the source of the wisdom code, with a reference for where you can go to read it directly or to discover greater context for yourself. And lastly, each section ends with a discussion of the wisdom code itself, its context, its meaning, and how we can apply it in our lives. And while this book may be listened to as a continuous narrative, it's also designed as an audio manual, a collection of wisdom to have at your fingertips for quick reference and emotional strength. Through the ancient words of those who have experienced in their lives the same challenges of loss and fear, difficult choices, and deep hurts that you face today, you are bound to those ancestors by the common thread of timeless human experience. It's in these moments that the centuries between then and now simply dissolve, and the mastery of the past can become your mastery in the moment. I want to thank you for exploring the wisdom codes in the pages that follow. How to use the wisdom codes. In times of need, I invite you to listen to the wisdom codes and then explore on a deeper level the section that calls to you specifically or reflects the kind of challenge that you're facing in the moment. The steps that follow describe a time-tested sequence for you to apply the wisdom codes and the power of the codes in your life in the same way that served our ancestors in the past. For the first step, familiarize yourself with the wisdom code that you've selected by listening to its source and its background. This powerful first step creates an opening that invites the words of the past to serve you in the present. For example, knowing that the same words that protected Moses 3,000 years ago during his perilous journey to receive the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai are available today gives us a reason to believe that the protection he received in his day is available for us as well. Step number 2, shift your focus using a technique that is called the quick coherence technique. The simple step of shifting your focus and your breathing, described in the following section, awakens a network of specialized cells in your heart known as sensory neurites. And these sensory neurites set into motion a sequence of hormonal and electrical signals in your body that create an emotional opening for you to embrace a new point of view. Focusing your awareness in the heart is effective because while the brain typically perceives the world as filled with polarity, such as left and right and good and bad and success and failure and so on, the heart does not. The heart is a non-polar organ. When we embrace word codes from the unified perspective of our heart's intelligence, we give ourselves objectivity and a healthier way of seeing our challenge. Many of the paradigm-altering discoveries regarding the human heart have been made by scientists at the Institute of Heart Math, a pioneering research organization dedicated to understanding the full potential of the human heart. By understanding the conditions of focus and breathing that create harmony in the body, a state technically known as psychophysical coherence, we can create those conditions to optimize the potential of the word codes in our own lives. The technique to achieve this harmony is appropriately called quick coherence, or the quick coherence technique, because it's been refined into 2 simple steps through the people at Heart Math. Individually, these steps send signals to the body that relieve stress and optimize our potential for healing, but combined, the technique creates a full body harmony that we typically experience in life when we feel safe and have a sense of well-being. Following is the quick coherence technique, adapted with permission from the Heart Math Institute. To use this technique, first, I invite you to begin by shifting your focus from your thinking mind to the area of your feeling heart. Sometimes it helps to gently touch the area of your heart with 1 or 2 fingers or an open palm in a way that's comfortable for you to direct your awareness away from your mind to your heart. Next, I invite you to begin breathing just a little slower than usual, as if your breath is coming from the area of your heart. And as you slow your breathing, I want you to know that you are sending a signal to your body and your heart specifically, a signal that you are in a place that is safe and that it's okay to turn your attention inward. This step alone can be a powerful technique unto itself when you're feeling overwhelmed by the day's events or simply desire to be more connected with yourself, but it also lays the foundation for the step that comes next. The next step, I invite you to activate a positive feeling in your heart, as if that feeling is coming from the center of your chest. To the best of your ability, feel a regenerative feeling such as gratitude or appreciation, care or compassion for someone or something in your life. The key in this step is to do the best that you can do, to create the feeling to the best of your ability and then surrender to the feeling. fully embracing it, while allowing it to radiate from your heart area to fill and permeate your entire being. These 3 simple steps create the conditions in your body to optimize the harmony and the coherence between your heart and your brain. Following step number 2, the 3rd step, is to listen to the wisdom code one more time. From the perspective of heart-brain connection that you've just created in step number 2, repeat the wisdom code that you've chosen, either silently or speaking it out loud. And without judging the ancient and sometimes awkward grammar or the poor sentence structure of these codes or the differences in translation, I'm inviting you to allow the wisdom and the intent of the message to permeate your entire being in the present moment. To the best of your ability, feel as if you're speaking the code, the prayer, the hymn, or the mantra directly from your heart. Ancient traditions, such as those of the monks in Tibet, typically speak their wisdom codes as they exhale their breath. So the technique is to continue speaking or breathing the lines of your wisdom code for a minimum of 3 minutes. Scientists have found that this is the minimal amount of time for the body to lock in its responses to the emotional shifts that you're creating through the word codes. For the 4th and final step, I invite you to simply notice how your body feels. Your body will respond quickly to the changes that you create in your awareness and your breathing. And while these changes may be subtle at first, they become more apparent as you become more attuned to the sensation. So now I invite you to pay attention to your physical sensations. What do you feel? Do you feel anxious or do you feel calm? Do you feel nervous or do you feel relaxed? I'm also inviting you to pay attention to your emotions. Do you feel fearful or do you feel safe? Do you feel out of control or in control? And I want you to know there are no correct or incorrect experiences. There are no right, wrongs, goods, and bads. The key here is to notice the difference that has occurred in your body from the beginning of the time that you began the word code process and now. You may repeat this process multiple times a day, including as the first thing you do to begin your day and the last thing you do before you go to sleep each night. And as with any other skill, the more you practice creating coherence between your heart and your brain, the easier it becomes to do so. And with that ease, the more natural the experience begins to feel. With growing ease, you'll be able to sustain the heart-brain connection for longer and longer periods of time. While the scientific studies describe coherence, what it is and why it works, our ancestors didn't need the science to benefit from the harmony that coherence gave them in their lives. They discovered that the techniques of regulating their breath and creating a heart focus in times of need gave them the edge they needed to survive the extremes of their time. But if you're interested in the scientific details of heart-brain coherence, its discovery and its applications, please refer to my book, Resilience from the Heart, from Hay House Publishers, specifically chapters number 1 and 2. The words are the codes. Writer Patrick Rothfuss tells us that words can light fires in the minds of men. Words can wring tears from the hardest hearts. It's been said that the best way to hide something of value is to keep it in plain sight. The ancient pyramid texts discovered in the temple complex of Saqqara, Egypt, offer a beautiful example of precisely this principle. Viewed by modern archaeologists, historians, and tourists since their rediscovery in 1880, the vast labyrinth of underground chambers holds a secret that's been plainly visible for over 4,000 years. The passages, carved under the 5th dynasty pyramid of King Unas, are covered from floor to ceiling with hieroglyphs that reveal an astonishing message. A map to the next world. Inscribed, etched, and carved into the walls are the instructions for how the human soul travels in death from the physical body into the next world, the afterlife. But the remarkably well-preserved inscriptions offer more than simply a manual for how to accomplish the journey. Beyond the alchemy of the transition itself, the texts acknowledge myriad emotions, such as worry and doubt, anxiety and fear, that inevitably come with such a journey. Following a typical human lifetime of complex and intimate relationships, difficult choices, and the sheer challenges of survival, the time of death, the soul naturally questions the decisions it's made over the course of its lifetime. And it's this personal life assessment that can lead to a sense of doubt when it comes to the soul's feelings of being worthy for the next world. Well, in the absence of someone physically present to offer comfort and reassurance to the transitioning soul of King Yunus, the ancient scribes who put these messages on the walls enlisted a substitute principle that would have been well known to initiates of all religious sects in Egypt at the time. The key to supporting the soul on its journey at death was to trigger a powerful shift in thinking, and to do so before the time of death. It's this shift that would initiate the physical process that assured a successful journey to the afterlife for the soul. The success of this pre-death initiation hinged upon the texts in the burial chambers being identical to texts that the soul, in this case the soul of King Yunus, had already become familiar with before his death. This means that at the time of his death, the king was already thinking about his journey to the afterlife. He was already prepared emotionally to accommodate the shift of energy for the transition that he was about to make. His brain had already been wired to support the new experience. The hieroglyphs on the temple walls were the catalyst for a shift in thinking that King Yunus had already embraced. The key here is that the hieroglyphs, or the pictorial words, were the codes that triggered the shifts. The secret in the Himalayas. Each day on the Tibetan plateau is both summer and winter. Summer in the intensity of the direct, high-altitude sun, and winter as the sun disappears behind the jagged peaks of the Himalayas. I'd invited 40 other people to join me on a journey that led us halfway around the world into one of the most remote, isolated, magnificent, and sacred places of knowledge remaining today, an ancient Tibetan monastery. For 14 days, we'd acclimated our bodies to altitudes over 16,000 feet above sea level. We'd crossed an icy river in a hand-hewn wooden barge and driven for hours with eyes peering at one another over the tops of the surgical mask that shielded us from the dust cloud that floated through the floorboards of our vintage Chinese bus. Holding on to the seats around us, and even onto one another, we'd braced ourselves and been jarred from the inside out as we crossed washed-away bridges and roadless desert just to be in this very place. But the beauty of the destination was well worth the price of the bumps and the dust. If the monasteries were easy to get to, thousands of people would have made the journey through the ages, and the wisdom preserved in these timeless shrines likely would have been lost to what we call progress. Well, on this day, I found myself sitting with my group on the cold stone floor of a windowless chapel, waiting for our very first meeting with the ranking elder of this ancient temple. The words are the codes. I focused my attention directly into the eyes of the beautiful and ageless-looking man, draped in maroon robes, seated lotus-style in front of me. He was the abbot of the monastery, and through our translator, I'd just asked the abbot the same question that I'd asked each monk and every nun we'd met throughout our pilgrimage. My question was this: "When we see your prayers," I began, "what are you doing inside of your body? When we see you tone and chant the mudras and the mantras and the bells and the gongs and the chimes for 14 to 16 hours a day on the outside, I ask, what is happening to you on the inside?" As the translator shared the abbot's reply, a powerful sensation rippled through my body, and I knew that this was the reason that we'd come to this place. "You've never seen our prayers," he answered, "because a prayer cannot be seen." Adjusting the heavy wool robes beneath his feet, the abbot continued. He said, what you have seen is what we do to create the feeling in our bodies. The feeling is the prayer, and the words create the feeling. The wisdom codes. The clarity of the abbot's answer reflected the discoveries that have been reported in recent scientific journals. He was telling us that the words of the ancient chants are catalysts that elicit the feelings which change the body of the person that offers them. The words are the codes. His message echoed ideas recorded in the ancient scriptures of the Gnostic and the Christian traditions of the West over 2,000 years ago. In early translations of the biblical book of John, for example, chapter 16, verse 24, we are instructed to empower our prayers through the words that invite us to be surrounded by the feeling that our prayer is already answered. Quote, ask without hidden motive and be surrounded by your answer. Be enveloped by what you desire so that your joy may be full. End of quote. Here we see that it's the words that ignite the emotion that empowers our prayers as the cascade of events that follow. When we allow ourselves to fully embrace what our spoken words mean on the deepest possible levels of awareness, they trigger biological responses that reflect the intent of the codes. The potential power of catalyzing such a biological chain reaction within us is clearly identified by the scribe Thomas in the lost gospel of which he is the namesake. It states that if we do this, we could say to the mountain, quote, mountain, move away, unquote, and it would move away. If the wisdom was that powerful in antiquity and worked consistently over a vast period of time in the past, then the same wisdom must still be useful to us today. Using nearly identical language, the Tibetan abbot and the Gnostic gospel were describing precisely the same principle. For over 5,000 years, our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions have recognized the relationship between the words we use and the way our brains function. They relied upon specific word patterns, and they would recite prayers and mantras, hymns and chants to provide themselves with inspiration, safety, comfort, and healing when they were faced with the inevitable challenges of everyday life. And although ancient and indigenous peoples were not scientists by today's standards, they understood the effect of the word codes very well. Although the times have changed, we're really not so different from our ancestors in how we respond when life's tests arrive at our doorsteps. We still reel from the loss of our loved ones. We still ask for protection when we feel afraid. We still seek guidance when we make difficult choices, and like our ancestors, we still can benefit from the wisdom codes that they discovered in their day. Part 1. Protection. Quote, I don't know if what I'm afraid of is the state of the world. Rather, I think what I'm afraid of is the state of my attitude about the state of the world. End of quote. These words were spoken by therapist and life coach Craig D. Lounsborough, and they echo what many people tell me they're feeling in the world today. Because all humankind shares certain fears, we have a universal sense that we sometimes need refuge and protection. Sometimes we feel a need to protect ourselves from forces that may be seen, such as an obvious physical threat. If we're protecting ourselves from an angry coworker, for example, we take the steps we need to avoid or resolve the anger that's directed toward us. This is the kind of protection that's easiest to identify, justify, and remedy. But sometimes we feel the need to protect ourselves from forces that are not so obvious because we can't see them. Unseen forces can be more difficult to remedy. These are the forces that our ancestors addressed through the use of wisdom codes that shift our perspective and, in turn, the chemistry of our bodies, to shield us when we feel the need for personal protection. The following wisdom codes for protection are taken from traditional prayers of the Christian, Buddhist, and Vedic traditions. Wisdom Code 1, Psalm 91. The first wisdom code number 1, states that he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God. In Him will I trust. This wisdom code is used for protection. The code itself was actually created by the prophet Moses as he climbed Mount Sinai to shield him from unknown forces during his ascent. It's become a standard for protection that's used ranges from the challenges of everyday life to the safety of entire armies preparing for battle. The source of this wisdom code is the King James Version of the Bible, Psalms chapter 91, verses 1 and 2. Among the 39 books in the Old Testament of the Protestant Christian Bible, the book of Psalms is unique. The general theme of the 18 books that precede Psalms and the 20 that follow it is that they primarily contain information, instructions, and commands directed from God to the people of the earth. And this is where Psalms is different. It does just the opposite. Rather than preserving divine revelations received from God, the 2,461 verses that make up the book of Psalms are hymns. They are songs of honor and adoration designed to be offered to God. In other words, the Psalms are prayers ready-made for situations that range from the general challenges of everyday life to specific prayers designed for families and communities in specific times of need. Psalm 91, also known on occasion as the Prayer of Moses, the prayer of protection, and the soldier's prayer, is one of the most powerful examples of what I mean here. I'm going to make a note that due to differences in translation and the way the Psalms are numbered, Psalm 91 in the King James Bible was also Psalm 90 in the much earlier ancient Greek version of the Bible, which predates it by about 1,700 years. Psalm 91. The ancient Hebrew Zohar, the foundational text of the mystical Kabbalah, describes how Psalm 91 protected the prophet Moses the second time he climbed to the top of Mount Sinai, which is the time that he received the Ten Commandments. The Zohar describes how Moses was enveloped during his ascent by a mysterious cloud of unknown substance and unknown origin. The cloud became so dense that he could no longer see ahead of him, nor could he be seen by those who were watching him from below the cloud. Moses didn't know what was happening and what the cloud meant or what to expect. He didn't know if he'd ever reunite with his family, his friends, and his followers again, and it was during this time of uncertainty and fear that Moses composed and recited Psalm 91 for his own protection. And for reasons that he attributed to the power of this prayer, Moses, in fact, was protected. He continued to climb until he reached the top of Mount Sinai, where he received the stone tablets inscribed with instructions that have been the primary law for the followers of the Jewish and the Christian faith for the last 3,000 plus years. Although Moses' original prayer in its entirety consisted of 16 verses, it's often abbreviated to only the first 2 verses that follow for ease of use and when time is of the essence. The abbreviated prayer goes as follows: He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him will I trust. Well, a closer look at this prayer reveals that the source of the protection it provides comes from the deeper layers of the meaning that may be known by those who understand the code. The coded names of God. While entire books have been dedicated to revealing the mystery of Moses' prayer protection, in the following discussion I will focus upon the coded names for God that are found throughout the prayer and the protection they provide us, starting with the words Most High. Coded name number 1, Most High. The first encoded name of God in this prayer is Most High. In Biblical Hebrew, this is typically translated from Aramaic, the original language of the Scriptures, as El Elyon, meaning God Most High or God the Highest, indicating that nothing can be greater or more powerful than the essence of the force represented in this name. The application of this word code is clearly seen in the Old Testament book of Genesis, chapter 14, verses 18 through 20. The words state, "Blessed be Abraham by God Most High, creator of the heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." End of quote. The second of God's hidden names is the word Almighty, and is typically translated by Near Eastern scholars from Aramaic as the word Shaddai, meaning Almighty, or El Shaddai, meaning God Almighty. This is one of the 7 names of God that are substituted for God's actual name over 6,800 times in the Hebrew Bible. The other 6 names are Aya, meaning I will be, Savat, meaning host, Elohim, meaning gods, El, meaning God, and Eloah, also meaning God. Coded name 3, Lord. The third coded name is perhaps the most direct, mysterious, and powerful. It is the personal name of God, Yahweh. Following the initial revelation of his identity to Moses on Mount Sinai as I am, Moses asked for a clarification as to how he should address God when in his presence. The reply was the one-time revelation of God's personal name to the people of the earth. In the book of Exodus, chapter 6, verses 2 and 3, God stated to Moses in no uncertain terms, quote, I am Yahweh, end of quote. In the earliest records of the Hebrew Bible, before the writing of the authoritative 6th century Masoretic texts, God's personal name is clearly identified as Yahweh. Because Orthodox Jewish tradition holds this name so sacred, however, it is never to be written or spoken as a common word. It's for these reasons that God's personal name was removed and replaced approximately 6,800 times in the Hebrew Bible with alternative names such as Adonai, Elohim, and Lord. Coded name 4, God. The fourth coded name, God, is translated from the Hebrew Elohim and is the most common name used for God in the Old Testament. While there continues to be uncertainty and mystery as to the precise translation of this word, it is typically associated with God, the Creator. The first insights into the nature of this mysterious word are found in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1, where the first sentence states, quote, In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, end of quote. In this reference, God is referred to in the singular as the Creator. Later, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, however, we are given a deeper sense of the power of this creation. Genesis 1:27 begins, quote, So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, end of quote, indicating that humankind is a reflection of a singular essence. Yet in the second part of the same sentence, the description of this primal act of creation expands, quote, Male and female created he them, end of quote, a reference that is dual rather than singular. In this way, we are shown the all-inclusive power of the Creator as both singular and plural. The soldier's prayer. In addition to offering a source of personal protection, since the time of its origin, Psalms 91 has also been used as a prayer of protection by entire armies as they prepare themselves for battle. During World War I, for example, it was common for military units to be given the assignment of memorizing the soldier's prayer the night before battle, and in doing so, Moses' prayer protection occupied their hearts and minds, preparing them for the hand-to-hand combat they were about to face on the battlefields of Europe. As mentioned previously, while the first 2 verses are often recited as a brief prayer protection, the entire prayer can be and often is used as well. Following is the complete version of Psalm 91 with the various names of God in individual lines emphasized for your convenience. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor from the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over thee to keep thee in all ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder. Because He hath set His love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I set him on high, because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. How to use Wisdom Code number 1. Please note, for the exercise that follows, you will need to shift your focus and your attention from the world around you to the world within you. For this reason, please do this only when you are in a place where it is safe to do just that. Do not attempt this technique while you're driving or operating heavy machinery or performing any task that requires your full undivided attention. The power of wisdom codes comes from their repetition and doing so in the affirmative. This imprints a code upon the subconscious mind when we create heart-brain harmony, as described in the previous section titled How to Use the Wisdom Codes. We open a hotline to communicate directly with the subconscious mind. From a place of heart-brain harmony, I invite you to recite this code line by line, either silently in your mind or out loud, until you feel an increased sense of trust and certainty that you are not alone. The key is to embrace this code with a focus of awareness, breath, and feeling in the heart rather than in the mind. For convenience, I'll share one last time the abbreviated version of this code. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under